in Women's Studies. The title of my paper is At Our Expense, Black Women in Sacrificial Motherhood. This title was inspired from Bell Hooks, her book From Margin to Center. In this, she asserts, to be in margin is to be part of a whole, but outside the main body. Our survival depends on an ongoing public awareness of the separation between margin and center, and an ongoing private acknowledgement that we are a necessary, vital part of the whole. I came from a department at the University of South Florida Women in Gender Studies. The book, All the Women Are White, All the Men Are Blacks, and Some of Us Are Brave was the catalyst to my academic journey. And even in that, I still see misrepresentations of Black women or no representation of Black women at all. So through an examination of Black women's essays, poems, journal entries, and short stories, I explore and deconstruct the implications of Black motherhood. Utilizing Rise Up Singing Black Women Writers on Motherhood, I analyze the sacrifices that Black women make for community sustainability. I conclude that Black motherhood plays a significant role in the lives of Black women, and therefore Black scholars need to examine frameworks that are inclusive of Black women's voices outside of the academy. Originally, for my data set, I started with the African American Women Writers Encyclopedia, and I wanted to look at autobiographies and poetry because those are the two forms of writing. The two earliest forms of writing published by Black women. You had Harriet Jacobs, you had Jarena Lee, Rebecca Cox Jackson. And then I wanted to look at Southern Black women who talked about motherhood. So after I narrowed down that list, I had about 32 women, and then I cross-referenced these women with the Black women writers featured in Rise Up Singing Black Women Writers on Motherhood. And I came up with about 5 or 6 that were Black women writers from the South. So those are the 5 or 6 that I highlight in this paper. So I specifically chose Rise Up Singing Black Women Writers on Motherhood because it's the only anthology on Black motherhood that features essays, poems, journal entries, and short stories from the perspective of Black women writers as mothers. In my deconstruction, I use Black feminist standpoint theory to deconstruct Black motherhood because it prioritizes Black women's experience. I also pay attention to Black feminist epistemology as identified by Patricia Hill Collins because it investigates the standards used to assess knowledge or why we believe what we believe to be true. In Rise Up Singing, I noted 5 themes that seem to be constant in Black women and their views on Black motherhood. Those themes are other mothering, the neglect of physical and mental health, single motherhood, lack of childcare, and the relinquishment of self. I utilize these themes to code the experiences that are evident in Rise Up Singing Black Women Writers on Motherhood. In Black Passports, Dr. Stephanie Evans invokes the term literary mentoring, which offers memoirs as a path to self-empowerment and self-definition. I expand literary mentoring to include poetry and prose, and utilizing Tupac Shakur and Sonia Sanchez as literary mentors, I developed a construction of Black motherhood as interpreted in Rise Up Singing Black Women Writers on Motherhood. The significance of Shakur and Sanchez as literary mentors is measured by the volume of work produced in their lifetime, as well as the demographics of the audience reached. According to Forbes, Shakur has sold over 75 million records worldwide, and most of those were released after his death. And Sonia Sanchez has published 14 books, 7 audio works, 3 children's books, and 2 volumes of prose. In Writing the Self into Being, Anna Julia Cooper, Textual Politics, Vivian May Wright, for Black women in particular, silence has often been violently imposed and not chosen. In Rise Up Singing, Darlene Clark Hines' culture of dissemblance is imprinted throughout the lives of Black women. Hines articulates the culture of dissemblance as the behavior and attitudes of Black women that create the appearance of openness and disclosure, but actually shield the truth of our inner lives and selves from our oppressors. In my argument, I assert that Black women utilize the culture of dissemblance in the context of Black motherhood. Therefore, I engage this culture to illuminate the Black mothers who Tupac describes as dying inside but outside looking fearless. Some of the limitations to this methodology is Black feminist standpoint theory does not account for the diversity of Black women's experiences, and it often privileges Black women's voices that come from within the academy, not outside. The label Black women writers affords a privilege that Black women outside the academy may not have, and then a lack of literature, theories, and frameworks regarding Black motherhood. I reviewed several syllabi from programs across the country, and what I noticed, they cited the same Black scholars when it came to Black motherhood over and over again, and those scholars are Patricia Hill Collins and Dorothy Roberts, but scholars such as Loretta Roth, Layli Maparian, Clenora Hudson-Weems, Angela Davis, Toni Cade Bambara, Audre Lorde, and Joe Morgan also contribute to the conversation of Black motherhood. And additionally, Rise Up Singing was published in 2003, and it's limited to Black women writers, and it does not include several Black women who has published since its release. Okay, so first I offer a definition of Black motherhood. This is where I use Tupac Shakur and Sonia Sanchez. In an interview from 1988, Shakur states, my mother took me through life, with me understanding that she's human. Sanchez characterized Black motherhood by the traits she noted in her mother and the women who surrounded her in adolescence. Sanchez writes, adult, powerful, loving, allowing nobody to rule me if I didn't want to be. In their respective versions of Dear Mama, Sonia Sanchez and Tupac Shakur acknowledged childhood memories that were full of all the sweet things their moms did for them. Both Shakur and Sanchez offer a reflection of the role that Black mothers play in the lives of Black youth. As Shakur asserts and Sanchez echoes, there's no way I can pay you back when my plan is to show you that I understand. Shakur and Sanchez define Black motherhood in terms of commitment, sacrifice, and understanding. Sanchez writes, let her be. She got a right to be different. She's going to stumble on herself one of these days. Just let the child be. And I be, mama. Similar to Shakur, Sanchez's construction of Black motherhood is dependent on self-sufficiency and providing youth the tools for self-construction. In verse 3 of Keep Your Head Up, Tupac writes, hell of a hand without a man, feeling helpless, because there's too many things for you to deal with, dying inside, but outside you're looking fearless. While tears rolling down your cheeks, you're steady hoping things don't fall down this week, because if it did, you couldn't take it. And don't blame me, I was given this world, I didn't make it. Tupac's lyrics specifically speak to the enormity of responsibilities placed on the shoulder of Black women. Tupac calls attention to Black women's mental health, and Tupac's incorporation of Black women's mental health aids in the construction of Black motherhood. Similar to Tupac, Sanchez illuminates the impact of Black motherhood on Black women's psyches. In Professor Sanchez's But How Do It Free Us, Professor Sanchez features a character named Brother. Brother states, so what if she's having my baby? It's something she wanted. I guess it fulfills her as a Black woman. Professor Sanchez's construction of Brother suggests that the pressure and expectation to mother has forced Black women to adopt essentialist notions of motherhood. These essentialist notions disrupt Black women's psyches by asserting that the value of Black women is in their wombs. And for my data analysis, I took the 5 essays, short stories, and poems, and then I applied Patricia Hill Collins' Black Feminist Thought. One of the things I noted was other mothering, and again I cited Patricia Hill Collins because she writes, Black women's feelings of responsibility for nurturing their children and their extended family networks has stimulated a more generalized ethic of care where Black women feel accountable to all the Black community's children. In Ernestine, A Granddaughter's Memories, Drew Rose recalls being raised by her grandmother. Rose recalls her grandmother performing all of the domestic duties, raising her cousin's children, and telling stories of how much she missed home. Despite her grandmother's desire to return, she never did. Rose writes, older, I understand better the complex weave of how generations of children chained my grandmother like steel. I understand, too, grandmother could not have behaved any other way. She would mother us as long as she believed we needed her. I know I needed her. I need her still. In this particular story, she talks about finding her grandmother's journal after her grandmother's passed. Her grandmother was about 80, and she eventually fell in the middle of the store from a heart attack, but her grandmother wrote, my time is coming, but if God gives me a choice, I'll be here as long as they need me. And I think that story demonstrates that Black women's acceptance of other mothering often makes them partners in their own oppression. For the category of neglect of physical and mental health, in Slip and Fall, Cicely Esberry is celebrating her son's 8th birthday. On the way to his school, she falls and the cake is destroyed. Instead of admitting herself to the hospital, she takes her children to school, and then she goes on this rant about resenting leaving her career for childcare, being a single mother, and then after she admits herself to the hospital, she's there for 2 hours, signs herself out, goes to the store, buys more cake mix to make sure that her son has a cake for his birthday. And then she acknowledges that the cost of stay-at-home motherhood has been my sure-footedness, but the cost of leaving my children was psychotic torment. Okay. For the relinquishment of self, I opened with a quote from Toni Morrison's Sula, where Hannah is having a conversation with her, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the text, but Hannah's having a conversation with her mother, and she asked her mother, well, did you ever love us? And her mom was like, what are you talking about? Did I love you? Girl, I stayed alive for you. Historically, Black mothers have continuously deprioritized the self to pave the way for their children. These sacrifices have come in the form of delaying education, leaving careers, single parenting, and going without. And Patricia Hill Collins writes, some women view motherhood as a truly burdensome condition that stifles their creativity, exploits their labor, and makes them partners in their own oppression. In An Unnatural Woman, Martha Southgate writes, a Black mother's love is supposed to be uncomplicated. It moves mountains. Some of us have always known the picture to be more nuisance than that. And then she goes on to talk about her children's needs intruded on her own for solitude, reflection, selfishness, and going without new shoes so they could have new shoes, or her going without glasses so that they could get glasses. And then she introduced the reader to the concept of Black motherhood as a farce, and it's not the products of motherhood, not the children itself, but having to parent in systems of oppression and patriarchal expectations, and basically being a single mother without being a single mother. Like, she had a husband, she had a spouse, but she was still responsible for all the primary caretaking responsibilities. And then there was some statistical data that I found to support these stories. Fact, Black women are the most educated group in America presently, but 72% of Black children are born to unwed single mothers. 26% of those children are living in poverty. Black women account for the highest rates of unintended pregnancy, and per the Huffington Post, Black women are more likely to be poor, unmarried, and to parent a child alone, which are all stressors that contribute to poor mental health. And then they're least likely to have resources like mental health insurance to address problems such as depression. And then to conclude, in Sister Outsider Essays and Speeches, Audre Lorde asserts that Black women should learn to mother themselves. According to Lorde, mothering ourselves means learning to love what we have given birth to by giving definition to, learning how to be both kind and demanding in the teeth of failure as well as in the face of success, and not misnaming either. And Nina Jenkins asserts that motherhood shapes women's relationships with other people, opportunities for paid employment, their leisure, their self-perception, and their individual identities. But knowing all of that, there's still a gap in literature when it comes to Black motherhood. And we don't exactly have a framework. We have Black feminist epistemology and Black feminist standpoint theory, but we don't have a designated framework for Black motherhood to address these theories. And then, like with Black feminist epistemology, it doesn't privilege voices that come from outside the academy. And I think that's something that we need. And otherwise, notions of Black motherhood are constructed in climates of oppression by the oppressor, and as a result, Black women become the defined and not the definers.